When it comes to journalism, this guy right here, he is all in. Chris Hayes, nice to meet you.
It's great to be here.
And under much better circumstances than the last time you were in Orlando.
I know. I actually was thinking about how the last time I was here was to cover the aftermath of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And it was my first time in Orlando, and it was such grave, awful circumstances to come to the city for the first time. So it is much nicer to be back, obviously, for these kinds of circumstances.
Much better mood this time around.
Yes, definitely.
What is your reason for coming to Orlando?
You know, we've been trying to get out of New York and do midterm coverage out in the States where the elections are happening. And we were really interested in Amendment 4, which is the felon voting rights reenfranchisement ballot initiative that's on the ballot here. And so we wanted to come down and take a hard look at that. And also there's two really fascinating statewide races happening here that are getting national attention, the governor's race and the Senate race.
What do you think of the state of our country right now? We keep hearing we're more divided than we've ever been. Are we?
I think the answer to that, I think, is yes and no. It has been the case in the past that partisan differences didn't neatly map onto, say, all the demographic differences, gender, race, all that. Increasingly, what we're seeing is a kind of sorting happening, where partisan and ideological differences mapped really clearly onto ethnic, racial, age-based lines, right? And I think that's making the country a more tempestuous place, a more conflict-ridden place. What a lot of work I think that's happening at the grassroots level out in the country shows is that it is possible to bridge those differences when you engage in sort of sustained civic action and conversation.
You are 39 years old.
I am.
You've won an Emmy. You've written a book. You have a podcast, and you have a nightly television show.
That's true.
You also have 3 children and a wife.
I do.
How are you doing this?
Barely, barely. A lot of caffeine. Yeah, it's kind of held together. Like it's like if you have, 8 feet of carpet for 10 feet of room. It's sort of constantly trying to sort of cover up the gaps.
But you're managing.
Yes, somehow.
Okay.
I was up early this morning, and I'll be back. I'm only in for one day. You know, this is a sort of thing where if I didn't have 3 kids at home, including a 9-month-old, I like being out and doing reporting, but it also means not seeing my family. So.
When you hear people say fake news and there's a big attack on journalists, do you have fear yourself being a recognized face?
I don't have fear personally. I mean, I got it pretty good. I'm pretty lucky to have the job I have, and part of the territory of that is people are going to have all kinds of opinions and feel all kinds of ways about you, which I can't control. I think the institutional attacks on journalism are really worrying for the health of American democracy, and that's bigger than just people saying fake news. It's about the actual funding sources and business models that keep, say, the state capitol here in Florida being covered, and whether there's enough reporters to do that kind of like shoe leather work. I think there's also ways in which I think people have a renewed appreciation for the role that journalism plays in our democracy in the last few years, and I think that can be really healthy.
Do you think there's a lot of truth to those who say that young people today, they're not watching news, they're getting it from their devices and they're getting it in very small increments?
I think the data bears out that younger people consume news differently, and they consume it in ways that are less comprehensive or substantive, I think, generally, than, say, like reading the newspaper. Reading the newspaper, I still think there's no replacement for it as a kind of way of...
Yeah, me too, but I think we're old school. So
Yes.
What does that mean for us going forward?
It's a real worry, honestly. I mean, I think the information ecosystem of the country is in really bad shape, and it's worrisome about how we reason collectively as a society, as a democracy, how we come to decisions about self-representation and what we want to do as a country, or what we want to do as a state or a city or a neighborhood. There has been a real change in the kind of way that people get information, and a lot of those changes, I think, have been pretty dangerous.
You seem like a very smart, hardworking, obviously hardworking guy. What do you do to relax? What do you do to have fun?
To be honest, I read, I follow sports, I play basketball, and I just like hang out with my wife and my kids. It's boring. I don't have any. I wish I could tell you some interesting hobby I have, but I don't have one.
Do you hang out with Rachel Maddow
We do.
and Lawrence O'Donnell? Do y'all get together for beers after work?
No, usually not, because everyone's working so hard, but Rachel and I get dinner fairly often, yeah.
Would you ever consider a career in politics?
Would I, I think in the past I had flirted with the idea of a career in politics, but I think I've probably said too much for that to be viable at any point in the future.
probably. Chris Hayes, thank you very much
Thank
for
you
spending
very
some
much.
time with us.
Appreciate it.
Good to meet you.